So if I had known that the previous speaker was going to make hoodies cool, I would have worn my flip-flops and my hoodie. Lydia, wherever you were right. So I did the best I could. I took my jacket off. I rolled up my sleeves. Thank you. You're from Silicon Valley, though, so you knew what to do. So actually, a few years ago, I almost quit. The reason why is I'm passionate about technology, which sounds like a kind of super geeky thing to say, but the reality is I'm passionate about using technology to solve problems and make an impact. New ideas for products pop into my head all the time. I've had 5 so far in this conference, and only 2 I stole from Patrick. And so, a few years back, the startup boom, the sexy thing to do is if you're a technologist is to quit your job and start a company, found a startup. And so I asked myself, is that what I wanted to do? Did I want to be an entrepreneur? So I did what any good citizen of the digital, or now I guess I have to say network age, would do, and I Googled it. And pretty soon I found this web page, 20 questions to ask yourself if you want to be an entrepreneur, which at first seemed like a Cosmo quiz, 20 questions to ask your boyfriend. But I went ahead and I did it anyway, and it was a good thing. Because within a few questions, I knew that it wasn't for me. You see, first, I'm a drummer, which despite what other musicians say, doesn't preclude me from founding a startup. But actually, this was a career that I wanted to pursue after graduating college. It was really fun. It was super exciting. But I didn't make any money. And I knew when I got to that question, are you willing to work long hours, put in lots of blood, sweat, and tears, and most likely not make any money? I knew the truthful answer was no. But beyond that, I'm a husband of a wonderful wife and a father of 4 amazing kids, which, by the way, I'm sure many of you agree, we all have kids that are just as cute as that one we saw yesterday splashing in a puddle. That's my little one up there. And so, when I got to the question, are you willing to risk everything and willing to put it all on the line and risk having to start over? I had 5 good reasons why the answer was absolutely no. So, went back to Google, of course, because that's what we do, and I found another word, intrapreneur. And that describes people like me that work inside large companies just like this one who have a passion for creating new products, who don't mind risk. Actually, we prefer risk. We prefer to seek forgiveness versus asking permission. And so, okay, now I knew, hey, this is what I want to do. And so one of those talent profiles came around. I wrote it down and sent it back. And no offense to HR, but I never thought I'd hear anything of it. And then a few months later, I got this invitation to attend this masterclass, Hyper Island, in Sweden. And so you'd think I would, this is great, but actually I was pretty skeptical at first. So why do I need to go to Sweden to learn about the internet? I already know about that. But when I got there, it was really interesting. It was really exciting. And it was really fun. Because we got to learn about dinosaurs. So these are creatures that became extinct because they failed to adapt to changes in their environment. So it turns out this is a pretty useful metaphor to use for companies. And so while we were there, we looked at a few different examples, one of which I'm sure you know well about. Kodak, at its peak, captured 90% of the US film market. They were one of the most recognizable brands in the world. But in 2012, they went bankrupt. And so we looked why. And obviously on the surface, they failed to react to changes in digital technology and to social networks beyond that. Pictures went from something that you took to preserve your most treasured memory to a way to share your life in real time with your family and friends, even take a selfie. And so, the challenge is you have to look past that and see the real reason. And the real reason is that they were complacent. They failed to understand the threats that they faced, which is crazy because Kodak actually invented the digital camera in 1975. And in 1981, they conducted an extensive study that told them they had 10 years to react to digital technology. But they didn't, because they were too afraid that a digital business unit would cannibalize the revenue from their film business. And so, after we looked at a few case studies, we turned inwards. We looked at ourselves. It's pretty easy to look at others and laugh at them and see where they failed, because we also have the benefit of hindsight. But what about us? Are we failing to react to threats that are out there? You've heard now a few times about LinkedIn. 260 million members, 1.5 billion in revenue for 2013. But beyond that, think about what they've managed to accomplish in the last 10 years. One of the key historical challenges of our business is finding candidates, getting their profiles and getting their profiles, keeping them up to date. LinkedIn's figured out how to do this by tapping into that innate desire of every professional to network with each other, and in the process, sign up for a LinkedIn profile and keep it up to date. And they can leverage that information. And so once they built their database large enough, they started to monetize it. Today, 50% of their revenue comes from their recruitment solutions, 50%. We're even a customer, which to me is pretty scary, because do you think they view us as a customer or as competition? So beyond that, another interesting space is that of online staffing, which is projected this year to reach $2 billion in revenue and $5 billion in 2018. And there was big news in December, as hopefully many of you know, that the two largest providers in the space, Odesk and Elance, announced plans to merge and form a combined business unit that would have $750 million in revenue. So then this is really where it got interesting at Hyper Island, I have to say, because the instructors started poking us and prodding us, asking, what are we doing about this? How are we thinking about this? Are we reacting, or are we a dinosaur? So I remember this moment so clearly. I looked around the room. I was like, oh my God, is this really happening? I'm in a room with all the EC, lots of other people, Patrick and Dominic, and I look over at Patrick, expecting to see him sort of like steamed up and pissed off. But he wasn't. He was engaged. He was interested. He was thinking it all over. Because he knows what we all learned later in that program, it's not too late. The first step is just to admit that there's a problem and understand that we face a challenge. That's the first step. Once you understand that, once everyone in this room can really embrace it, maybe this could be the last conference where we have to talk about why we need to change, then we can move on with the business of how we do it and what we're going to do. And so back at Hyper Island, over the course of the next few days, we got the chance to dive into that digital and network world and bounce ideas off of each other. And I worked up my courage, and I went over, Patrick, I have this idea. Why don't we try to fight fire with fire? Why don't we create an incubator inside this company that can use the techniques of startups? Think like a startup. Think like a company that wants to put Adecco out of business and cultivate our own solutions. So I was a little bit surprised, but he said, let's go for it. Let's do it. And thanks to his support and with the help of Dominic, and really I have to say thank you to Doug Levy and his support, we created Ignite 4 months after the end of that masterclass. So Ignite's based in Jacksonville, Florida, and we're a team trying to create digital disruption, network disruption, the next generation of products. We're a small team, only a little more than 20 people, but we have a big vision. We want to transform Adecco from the world's largest staffing company to the world's leader in digital recruitment. This company has many assets that we can leverage, and one of them is we have a perfect motto: better work, better life. One of Kodak's failings was that they were in the film business. Well, what happens when film goes away? You have no business. Work isn't going away anytime soon. Better work, better life. And so our mission is to fulfill that by using technology to change the way that people find work. And we do that not by looking inside at ourselves. We do it by looking outside. We look at our customers, we look at our candidates, and we look at our associates. And we've developed a simple 4-part strategy for how we do this. First, we're inspired by human problems. We create digital solutions, we work lean and fast, and we learn from the data. And that may seem still a little kind of pie in the sky, so I think an example will serve it best. A few months back in October, at the request of Joyce Russell, hi Michelle, and I went to visit Adecco US's on-site program at Honda, run by Michelle Cook, outside of Columbus, Ohio. It's a fabulous story if you haven't heard it. A client they've had over 20 years. I mean, I'd love to have a client I've had over 20 years. There's over 2,400 associates there. And we visited with Michelle's team, this wonderful team, incredible customer service. We even toured the factory floor. And while we were there, we were struck by something. You see, on the other side of that wall exists a jarring juxtaposition. There's a state-of-the-art manufacturing assembly line full of computers, automated robots, and almost 10,000 people. This serpentine, choreographed dance that produces 2 brand new Honda Accords every minute. Every 60 seconds, 2 brand new cars roll off to the end, they're started up, they're driven off. I mean, it's mind-boggling. You think of all the details, all the, the supply chain, everything that resulted in that. It was just really astounding to see that. But back on the other side of the wall, we saw associates running in before their shift to find their badge ID in a 27-page document to see how many hours they'd worked, how many days off they had. It was a real striking contrast of high and low technology. So then we applied our process. So first, we're inspired by our human problem. I realize, many of the CFOs in the room, maybe even my boss, think that's a little bit touchy-feely. But the reality is if you empathize with someone, you can create products that engage them without shoving them down their throats, that they will use voluntarily, that they will come back to. We heard about engagement and retention. They will keep coming back, and beyond that, they will tell their friends. They will refer their friends. And think about what happens. We all hear about, all these things go viral. Well, things go viral because people refer them to their friends. So in this case, we thought about what we heard. When do I get my next raise? When do I get my next day off? We actually met a great colleague, Evan McDavid, who's come up with some creative solutions on his own to these problems. They were wonderful. And in fact, they inspired us on our way home to create our own digital solution. So what we decided to do was use SMS or text messaging. We would give the associates a number to text. They'd text in their badge ID, and they'd receive a response from the system. How many hours they worked, how many days off they have available. And they could have this wherever they were, whenever it was. I mean, think about all the stuff you guys take for granted, all that we take for granted. Imagine one of them has a sick child, and it's the night before, and can I afford to miss work tomorrow? Now they can know, right then, right there. So then, we worked lean and fast. We heard earlier how important it is to be agile and work fast. The secret to it is keep things simple. When they're simple, you can do them quickly. The most critical thing today is to learn about whether users, whether you've captured their problems. I talked before about empathizing with them. You need to build a solution. You need to get it in their hands to see if you got their problems right. The slower you work, the bigger it gets. You don't find that out. Today you can build, and I know this may seem odd to all of you that are not technologists, given enough time and money, you can build anything. I mean, we're in the golden age of technology. You can build anything. But what you can't predict is will users want to use what you build? And that's the most important thing. That's the only thing that matters. So in this case, we asked an Ignite engineer, Greg Dizia, to work on the solution. In 2 days, he built what we'd spec'd out there. And then we sat back and we learned from the data. We rolled it out on a Friday afternoon at 5 p.m., less than 2 weeks from when we visited with Michelle and her team. Didn't really expect much to come of it. Who knows? It was only 2 days, nothing venture, nothing gain. But that next morning, we had 100 users already. By the following Monday, we had 170. By the end of that week, we had 500. By the end of the month, we were up to 800 unique users of that system. And since that time, we're almost at 900. And over 70% of them have come back week after week. So the first thing that we learned is that we were really onto something. Users valued our product. They valued it enough to use it the first time. They valued it enough to keep using it. But what's great about digital solutions is beyond those numbers right there is you are able to capture passive information as well. And so in this case, we were able to collect phone numbers and associate them with badge IDs. Now we have current contact, mobile contact information, the only phone number that matters today. We have that seamlessly from our solution. You guys know better than me how valuable that is, not only when they're on assignment, but when we want to set them up for their next opportunity. So that's a simple example, but I think it illustrates our point. It's actually one that we're going to proceed with further this year with Joyce and Sandy Hokanson. We're doing a workshop later this month to think about ways that we can help with the general staffing business. So in 2013, we used this process that we created to work on a number of products. We created lots of new stuff, and I would love to stand here and tell you that they're all a resounding success, because that's really the fairy tale ending that we all want to have. But the reality is this business is really, really hard. I mean, we hear about all the successful startups. There's way, way more unsuccessful. And so we had to, swallow our pride, learn from our mistakes, and move on from those that were not viable in order to focus on those that were and to generate new ideas to keep moving forward. So I'd like to highlight a few of them for you. So I'm sure most of the people in this room have purchased a product from Apple. Probably an iPhone, maybe an iPad, maybe even a MacBook. And when you receive that, you get this incredible box, almost something that's like a piece of art itself. You want to put it on its shelf. And you start to open it, you can almost hear like a choir of angels singing when you open that thing. And you take it out and your shiny new device is there. And it's like, wow, I've got this new iPhone from Apple. I am so cool. I feel so good. And you're so set up by that packaging, that experience of taking that out of the box, that you already start to develop a love for that product. And I'm sure all of you have purchased something from a lower-end manufacturer. Maybe it came in a brown box, or maybe in some, those bubble wrap things that you're just like wrestling with to open up, and then you almost break the product when you take it out of there. And even before you've used it, you're almost pissed off, And so, with Matchstick, we thought about that. In a lot of ways, the product of our company is the candidate that we submit to our client. And which do you think the experience is more like today for a hiring manager, receiving a CV attached to an email? Maybe it's a different format every time. Do you think it's more like that Apple experience, or do you think it's more like that other rip it open? So with Matchstick, we aspire obviously to be a bit more like Apple. So we wanted to give hiring managers a great way to view the candidate with consistent formatting. If they have multiple candidates, to be able to compare them easily and quickly and make the best decision in the shortest amount of time possible as to which candidate to proceed with. And now you guys know as well the other part of our strategy. With digital solutions, you can capture additional data. And so now, unlike that resume or that CV that was attached to an email, we heard yesterday about waiting for feedback. With Matchstick, you know instantly if the client has even bothered to take a look at that candidate. As soon as they've done that, we know. We know how many times they did it, how long they looked at it. Did they share it with any of their colleagues? You know how vital that information is. And so I'm excited to say, actually, Matchstick has been incorporated and integrated with the Recruiter Workplace, and will be part of that for 2014. And you'll see a little bit more about Matchstick later on today. One of the other key challenges, obviously we care a lot about youth unemployment, is entering the workforce after graduating college. It's a pretty tough market out there. In the US, 53% of students that graduate from college will either be unemployed or take a job that didn't even require a degree. That's pretty staggering. But the good news is that if you get one paid internship during your college career, you'll almost double your chances of receiving a good job offer post-graduation. And so with Wicked Smart, what we wanted to do is give students access to those career-building internships that could, change their experience, change their life, better work, better life, and expose them to great companies who try to recruit interns today using an archaic process of going to career fairs and sifting through thousands of resumes. Here, we give students the ability to have an online profile, take assessments, and earn badges. They don't have much experience. All they can showcase is their ability. And so we've already signed up a few employers. I'm actually wicked excited to say that we're working with Adecco Canada on an internship contest, and they'll be using Wicked Smart. So finally, with Opify, we wanted to tackle one of the biggest challenges our industry faces. Professional candidates generally don't like recruiters. There's even websites out there dedicated recruiter spam. And the reason is that we don't earn their trust. They don't think of us as an ally trying to find them a better position, a better opportunity. And so with Opify, what we wanted to do was give candidates that experience. We just rebranded recruiters. We call them talent agents. And we give candidates a mobile application that understands their needs. It's very simple and easy for them to use, and our talent agents present great opportunities to them that they can accept or reject with a simple swipe of their thumb. We don't send them noise, just great opportunities. And I think there's a lot of promise here. I think it really could be part of our strategy for next generation sourcing, because we're empathizing with that candidate and we're thinking about what they need. So that's what we created in 2013. I'd love to share more details about that with any of you that are interested. Furthermore, I'd really love your open and honest feedback. Tell us what you like, but really tell us what you don't like as well. That's what helps us make these products even more successful. So what's next? Well, we want to work more with you this year. And so, in the spirit of the stuff that we've heard before, I want to welcome you to join Ignite, all as honorary members of Ignite. It's not just our responsibility to come up with these ideas and generate them, and build them. I have the team and the process. We can build stuff, but I'd love to hear more from you. And so one of the workshop sessions we'll hear today, I'd like you all to come in with a mindset of, now I'm joining Ignite, and I'm going to be someone who's going to help generate some new ideas. It's only a 20-minute workshop. It's going to be pretty intense, but I'd love to hear what you come up with. And I know one of the challenges we always face is, well, what about the budget for these ideas? Well, we have the budget to build something. And so what we're going to do is collect the best ideas that we generate in these workshops. We're going to send out a poll tomorrow. And the best idea I will take back to Ignite, the most popular idea, and we will work on it in 2014. So finally, I ask you to consider this number. It represents our 31,000 colleagues. They're dedicated, they're talented, they're incredibly entrepreneurial. That's one of the things I didn't really understand about this company, is how entrepreneurial everyone is. They're very creative as well, but unfortunately, we doubt their creativity all too much. We doubt their ability to innovate. We ignore their ideas. We laugh at their crazy ideas. But the problem is not with them. The problem lies with us. We put them in silos of corporate hierarchy. We ensnare them with red tape and complex processes, and then we put them in these very specialized roles where they don't have room to even move or think. The challenge is, that's dinosaur thinking. We know where that leads. So instead, let's use resources like this conference to understand why we need to change, see examples of the things that we can do. Let's use Hyper Island and the fabulous training that the HR department puts together for us. Let's support Frank, who we're going to hear from in a few minutes, and his efforts to transform the business with IM and give us the modern platform for our core data and operations. And finally, I want you to look at Ignite not as this special team off to the side doing cool stuff, but really as a partner to help drive innovation in the company. Together, let's ignite that spark that transforms those 31,000 colleagues into 31,000 entrepreneurs. This is a great company. Let's not be a dinosaur. Thank you.
Nailed it.
Thanks.